Hey, welcome back. This week we're going to start with the reassembly of the heater box and get that installed on the truck. Then we're going to do a whole bunch of junior locksmithing on the front two doors to get the locks to work perfectly. We're going to do a brief detour to the Scout to put a wing window in. Then after that, I tore the spare C-Series driver's door apart on a bench out here in the driveway to figure out the lock mechanism when I couldn't get that to work. Turns out I didn't need to do that. We'll get into the reasons for that. And then finally, you can see over my shoulder, I took the canopy down. So stay tuned and I'll take you through it all. So we're starting out here on the bench in the basement. I've already tested the blower motor out and that works fine. So that gets screwed back in. What I'm doing now is measuring the old foam around the top part of the blower and putting in some new foam that I've gotten off of Amazon. This is going to go around the blower and basically mate up with the bottom of the vent chimney. So this is the repaired back panel of the piece that I put together a couple of months ago. I'm finally drilling the holes, the mounting holes, to get this thing to mount onto the back of the box. I had to rebuild one small corner of this thing, and it turned out okay. You're never going to see it, so I'm not too worried about how it looks, but it's been welded together, it's been primed, it's been rust-stopped and everything, so it should be good to go. Now I'm pulling the radiator section out. I'm just going to put a piece of tape in between the front of that and the element itself so there's no rattling in the front of the box, and then I'll just slide it back in. That's a pretty easy and quick thing to do. Just getting these hoses into this thing is a little tricky, but overall, none of this was that hard. Here's the heater box I'll put back together. Wiring's in place. I'm using this foam that I got from Amazon on the top of the heater box. So all I've got to do now is get some stainless screws for the back of it. I'm going to go out and do that in a couple of minutes. Get the stainless screws, put those in, and I should be able to reinstall this thing hopefully today. Test it out, make sure it's running, and that'll be that next part. So at this point we switch over to shaky helmet cam, and what I'm doing is prepping the heater box to basically mount to the firewall. This actually went really easily, but I realized when I was in the middle of doing this that I needed to hook up a couple of the cables before I put this thing in. So right now, really, all I'm doing is test fitting this thing. It is actually a lot heavier than it looks, and I'm trying not to like drop it and scratch it because I spent all that time basically refinishing the whole thing. So here you can see I'm putting it through the firewall. There are 3 main bolts, and then there's the 2 heater hoses that have to go through the firewall. Once I was actually able to get this thing in, it went in super easy, but right now this is just sort of a test fit. Right about here, I remembered that I needed to hook up the vent cable to the cowl chimney, basically the vent that goes up into the cowl, and I had to find that cable, and so this is a little bit of sleuthing to figure out where that cable is. Once I stuck my head under the truck, I also remembered that I didn't have the retainer clip that went on the chimney itself, so I had to go find that. Here's one of the many reasons you keep everything that you pull off of a truck. This is my second bin of miscellaneous parts of stuff that I pulled off the trucks and everything. This was in a tin that I have of miscellaneous Travelall bolts. I'm looking for this. This is basically the stay that connects the vent. It's basically the vent pulley, the rod that goes under the dashboard to the actual vent itself. Couldn't find this anywhere. It wasn't in the truck. I went through this bin, I went through that bin, I went through a couple of other bins in the garage. Came upon my miscellaneous Travelall bolts bin, and I found exactly what I needed. Thank God, because I was thinking this was going to stall me. I have to put this in before I can actually put the heater box in. So now we've got to find the bolt to put in here, and I should be good to go. Heater box is now screwed in. It's looking really good. I'm really happy with the way this looks. I didn't notice this until I put this in, but this color is actually the same color as the inset of the dash panel, which really works out well. So I think with this being that color, these two things being the same color, and then when the door panel goes in, this is going to look really good. So I'm pretty happy with this. Got to hook the wires up next. I'm actually going to do that right now and just make sure that this thing actually turns on with the battery on, and then I will put the hook the coolant hoses back up. But she's in place. All right, so power is hooked up, which is great. Interesting thing. So if I turn the controls on for that, these are the two controls. That's basically the fan control. I turn those on with the key off, nothing happens. I turn the key on. Now I get power. So this actually has switched power, which is really interesting. Which you can hear, maybe. You can hear the blower going. So that's in good shape. Next up, I've got to connect up this. Then I can put the plenum back in and basically get the heating stuff all buttoned up today, which is super cool. The passenger door is the door that has a working inside and outside latch. It doesn't close all the way because it needs to be adjusted. What happens is, if the door is open, I can open the door and close it, and I can lock it from here. Now it's locked. This barrel does not come out. It basically stops here, and it only goes that way and this way. Now you'll notice I can't unlock it yet because this linkage is, like I said, it's kind of bound up inside. But I can, from the inside, unlock the door and open it. Before I was able to actually open it from here, but I think the linkage, it's just bound up. So I've got to work on that. But the good thing is that the barrel doesn't come out. You'll notice that it does have some give when I pull on it. I've got two of the spring clips from a couple of spare Scout doors that I got soaking in vapor rust. I'm going to paint those, and I'm going to replace the one that's in here with those and make sure they've got plenty of give so that this doesn't move out at all. But I think I've solved the lock problem. Taking a brief detour to put in a wing window that actually has a decent hinge, better than the one that I bought this one at Nat's a bunch of years ago, and it was sort of crappily put in, and the rubber's all screwed up. This is the one from one of the spares I have in my garage, and the rubber's in really nice shape, and the hinge is in good shape, and the catch on the other side is in really good shape. And even this bottom part, I mean, this is almost brand new. It looks really good. So I'm going to throw this one in really quick tonight. I've already pulled this one out. It took me 10 minutes, 3 bolts. So I'll slap this one in, and I'll shoot some pictures of it when I'm done. So very briefly, there are 3 bolts. There's this one here. You got to pop the little chrome button off of here. Pop that off, and then there are 2 bolts on the inside of the door. There's one right there. There's one right there. They are covered with these little black rubber pieces. Just pop those out, and then there's a series of 1/2-inch bolts. These look like they were original to my truck because they're covered in overspray. I'm going to put these back in with a magnet. I'll get them started because if they drop down into the door, you will never see them again. They'll go all the way down here, and it's really hard to get them. So start them very carefully. Actually, might start them. I'm using a long socket just so I can get them in between the space between the door and the fender here. But get that in place, and then that's basically it. That's all that holds this whole unit in. And you can see here, it looks and it seals much better. This whole section of the rubber on mine was gone. This is all in one piece. So once I get it in, I'm going to clean it up. It's been sitting in my back corner of my garage for probably 10 years, but this whole section seals up a lot better. And most importantly, that's clean and this is clean. So maybe a 20-minute job that's going to make a big difference in, you know, at least the wind coming through this corner of the truck. This is a lot like playing Operation the Wacky Doctor's game. You've got to basically get the rod on the backside of the lock cylinder to thread into a square-shaped cam on the inside of the door. It's kind of tricky. And then the other thing you've got to do is hold that clip in place so that once you actually get that rod where it's supposed to go, then you slide the clip into the back of the lock cylinder, and that's what holds it in the door. I will admit that at this point it was late and I actually didn't get it right this time, which led me to the next part of this video. I'm using my spare door right now to try to figure out how this mechanism works so that I can reverse engineer the one in the red truck. What's happening with the red truck is I've got the lock barrel in place, goes this way. It's clearly not attached to anything right now, and what happens is the lock pulls out. So I'm going to pull this entire mechanism out, and I've got to figure out how that all comes out. It might be that I have to tear this entire door down, which wouldn't be the worst thing. So we'll have to see how that goes. So basically I started tearing down the spare green door to try to get back to the mechanism. I'd already taken a whack at taking this door apart back in May, and I got stymied at the point where I was pulling the vent window assembly out. Now that I had it on the bench and I knew a little bit more about the window, I found it was actually a lot easier to pull apart at this point. So just with a little bit of finagling and some work, I was able to get the vent assembly out and the window crank and door latch mechanisms out of the door as well. So let's see, if I use the door striker on the front, that's open. If I use the door handle on the inside, that's open. That all works fine. So if I now close this thing and try to use the lock handle on the door to lock it, I don't get anything, which is weird. It's supposed to lock somehow. And for what I can tell, the locking mechanism has something to do with this element here and this cam here. This is where the barrel to the lock on the door, the actual key lock, comes through, and it's supposed to come down here and do something. Release this or open it up, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't been able to figure that out yet. This whole cam is supposed to move somehow, and it's not moving at all. In the meantime, I've taken all of the parts out of the door with the exception of the hinges. So the window crank assembly is here. These are all the parts that came from it, and then those are all the window and interior door section pieces. It's actually good to have this thing torn down. I'm going to tear this thing down. I'm actually going to wind up tearing all the doors down and the hood, have them sent out for sandblasting, and then paint them, and then I'll swap them out with what's on the truck. But right now, let's just work on getting these locks figured out. All right, so end of day one. I'm pretty happy with the progress I've made today. Got a late start. I only was able to get out here after noon. Interesting thing happened with my Scout. I was out getting my hair cut, which was long overdue, and she started up fine, drove all the way out there, got my hair cut, came back out, she wouldn't start. Checked, she was getting gas, she was getting air, so I pulled the cap and found that the points on the cap were all very corroded, to the point where I'm surprised it started up in the morning because it was damp, it was wet. So I cleaned those off with some sandpaper, and then she fired up after that. It took her a little bit of time, but she came to life and drove fine for the rest of the day. So I think I'm going to look for a new cap and rotor, and I'll just swap those out as some preventive maintenance, basically. I hope I can get back out here tomorrow and keep working. Trying to think of what else I've got on the docket right now. We'll see. It was a good day working on the truck. I got a lot of stuff done. I was able to get the heater box mounted and in place with some new hardware. Got the hoses hooked up. I got the electrical hooked up for that, which was great. The electrical works fine, and I found out that it actually is keyed to the ignition system, which is a shock to me. So the hoses are up, the ignition's in. I got the vent on that side hooked up. It's a little dicey, and the linkage underneath the dashboard is being a little funky, so I got to figure that out. And I got the defrost vent hooked up. Actually, the whole plenum that goes next to the heater box all the way underneath that provides heat to your feet and splits the air out to the defrost vents is actually reinstalled, so that's cool. So the first thing I did on Sunday morning when I got outside is to check and make sure that the rod on the back of the lock cylinder had made its way into the actual mechanism, and it hadn't. So pulled it all apart, hooked it up correctly, and lo and behold, the driver's door now works exactly as advertised. The lock stays in, the door unlocks, the door locks from both sides. Hallelujah, amen. I've got afternoon updates. I wasn't recording a lot of this because I had the Ravens game on, and I don't want the National Football League to come and take my truck and my house and everything else I own. So I'll just go over what I did here. Let's see, what did I do here? I took my tent down. So the tent is now down, and you can actually see the roof of the truck in the daylight, which is pretty cool. I have not messed too much with anything under the dash since yesterday, but the dash is all working and everything. I did take the cover off the dash and try to chase down what was going on with my turn signals, and it turned out it was something very simple, which is what I figured it would be. One of the leads on the temp gauge had basically come off, and so that's why I wasn't getting everything on the dashboard. So I've got my turn signals back. I cannot tell you how happy that makes me. I also started the truck. I threw a little bit of gas in the carb and started up the truck and ran it for just a little bit, just, as long as the gas in the carb would run it. I'm pretty sure there's no gas in the tank. I think it all evaporated. I think I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to let that sit. I'm probably going to drain the tank and see if I can drop it in the fall, because I want to cut this out in the fall and weld in new metal while it's cold. So after I'll take this seat out. I'm going to cut that floor out, and after the tank is dropped, while I can still get to the tank and everything, just cut it out, replace it, weld it all back in, and then I'll put the tank in for good, and that'll be that. The other big thing was that the locks are on the doors. The locks work on the doors. I showed that earlier, which is awesome. Figured that out. So this one's good. The one on the other side is good. So the truck will lock, which is great. I think what I'm going to do, the other thing I'd really like to do in the fall is finish setting up the lockbox. I've got the lockbox here. It's been sitting here. I haven't done anything with it. What I need to do is weld some tabs into it so that I can permanently mount it. I've got to touch it up with some paint. You can see the edges have gotten dinged, but I'm also going to hit it with some of that clear coat that I got for the doors and everything, just to protect it. I know it's going to get dinged up even more. That's fine, but I figure some clear coat can't hurt. So I'd like to get that in so I can just store some simple tools in here and just keep them locked up or whatever, and then make preparations for the actual bench seats. Those are the big things. It was just a lot of back and forth and back and forth. The other thing I did, the reason this door is open, is took out all of the weather stripping on the passenger or the driver's door. This has been, I hit this with a nylon brush on my drill, got all of the old debris off. I ground these two tabs down a little bit more and basically got all the rest of it off, and then hit it with some of the IH Rattle Can Red. It's the rust stop. So that's all ready to go. I'm gonna let that sit and cure overnight, and then I'll come back out probably tomorrow. It's gonna be a nice day tomorrow, and I will put the weather strip on the driver's door, and then I'll do the same thing on the passenger door probably later in the week. So that's the video for today. Hope you liked it. If you get a chance, like and subscribe. That'll help me build the channel up a little bit more, and stay tuned for the next one. Should be here in a week or two. Thanks. I wanted to make one quick other plug for my threadless store. It's up at a link down below. If you like this shirt, I've got a bunch of others like this in a couple of different colors. And there's a bunch of other Scout merch there too. Every dollar you spend there goes right back into these trucks. So if you like what you see, please buy early, buy often. Thanks.